Rachel, thanks so much for joining today. I'm so delighted to have this conversation with you.
Great to be here, Maureen. Happy snow day for us.
Yes, we talk all the time, but it's nice to be able to kind of put some structure around this. So both of us kind of have overlapping communities and areas of interest. My community are folks who care about driving change, whether it's at the individual level or the leader level, and are just frustrated by the muck, which I know you deal with as well. So just thinking about addressing strategic decision making supported by day-to-day leadership stuff, we have so much data. No one wants to make decisions without it. But what's the challenge with that?
Well, the challenge is we have so much data online data, that we can tell when someone metaphorically has picked their nose, right? Like we have so much data, right? Like we're drowning in it. However, that's online, it's not offline. So there's a inherent imbalance there. But also, data has a couple of problems, which is data is inherently biased, right? Like the way you collect it is based on the architecture you give it from the get-go. So it's always going to be biased. So that's one problem. The second problem is that data can't show you white space. Data can only show you what happened. And in a world where innovation is getting a lot more important, white space is what's really vital to figure out. The third issue, and this matters in terms of advocacy and energy, is that data is not moral. So I find it useful sometimes to step back from the data and kind of ask yourself, what is the right thing to do? Or what is the interesting thing to do? Or what do all of my constituents feel passionate about? Like, what do they care about? And if we satisfy them, what impact will that have? And then until you have hypotheses about what that might be, and then go back and look at the data, data can't lead, right? Like if you let data lead, you're going to have the blinders of the past on you.
Absolutely. So I want to follow up on those 3 points. So the first one about the data you collect is based on the architecture you give it. I think the market is starting to understand that, not just the head of the peloton or whatever, but more people are beginning to get that. It's interesting about data can't show you white space. Could you talk a little bit more about that and a couple examples of that?
Yeah, so one of the things that's happening across medicine, across science, across technology, across business is that we've exhausted siloed expertise, right? Like if you think about the medical field, a cardiac specialist knows everything there is to know about the heart now. And now it's about how does the heart interact with the nervous system?
Great point.
Right? So now I have to connect 2 different disciplines and see what impact they both have, and then start to hypothesize about how they interact. And that's the area that shows the most potential for new breakthrough innovations.
Love it.
But we have no data on that, right? So you can't go back and say, like, if we had data on it, it wouldn't be an innovation, right? So if you are wedded to the data, you're always going to be in this catch-22 where you're not going to get to the next big thing.
Excellent. And obviously I see correlations for that in my work in trying to get the functional areas, product marketing, sales, and success unsiloed. Your third point, but I really think I want to hone more in on this middle point. Your third point is that data is not moral, which I think we are we are starting to hear, particularly in the space of AI. Again, I think the market is just beginning to open up to that. I think there's lots more we could talk about, but let's come back to this white space, and the exhausting the siloed information. Come back and look in terms of organizations. What do you want leaders doing about that in particular? What could they start doing today? What do they need to start thinking about for the long run?
So one of the cultures we have around leadership is that leaders know the answer and tell everybody else. However, if we're stuck in this existing blind spot, we actually need people that are going to challenge us, right? And that's not the de facto dynamic of leadership. Leadership is supposed to come in, be confident, and tell everybody something. Well, the new order of leadership is getting diverse perspectives around that really challenge us to think differently. And that is an uncomfortable place for a lot of traditional leaders who, I've met them, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. No.
Guess we've all been trained to that, haven't we?
The problems are where the white space is, right? And understanding that, I think about innovation, and I used to be a product manager, and a lot of people think innovation starts with ideation. And I'm like, no. Ideation is about the next iteration of what you already have, right? You've locked people into your solution already. Innovation starts with art, right? Where I can't even express what I'm thinking. I feel something. And so I create art, and that art now instigates a conversation. And when it instigates a conversation, people start putting words around it. And that's where you're most likely to get some of these new ideas. Which is also another why art? Why art? We have this very logical, controlled process. So there's that element, that soft element that leaders really need to bring in that they're often not comfortable with.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You were commenting on a tweet thread this morning, I think that started with Wayne Sadin, and talking about how this has to come from the top. And I had said, the top hasn't gotten this message, and you added on to that. But how do we get through to the folks? I think there's a very small cream of the crop slice of leadership that is leaning into this work. Mm-hmm. And the rest are either not getting the message or don't know how to parse the message when they get it. How can we start inspiring more leaders and to start? And where should they start for the ones who are maybe struggling with this?
So I think some of it, a lot of it is a mindset shift about what you're doing day to day and what your objective is personally. And what you can do as a leader is provide more safe space to have conversations. But in order to do that internally, you really have to get out of your organization and find a safe space for yourself to explore different things. And going to the predictable executive education sessions is probably not the place to go. I find it's much more effective to go to sessions where you're going to reflect, you're going to talk, and there's not going to be an answer. And you may actually leave more frustrated than you started. And you need to sit with that. And you need to be used to, one of the things I'm working with some of my clients is having meetings that are conversational. Like, we're so focused on having productive meetings that we go through and we have this rigid agenda, boom, 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 boom. What if you instead just said, let's talk. What do you think's important? Talk to me. And even people who want to change that way really need support and coaching or backfill for that, because it feels very just wrong based on all of our experience. And so having somebody there to help navigate that open conversation in a way that ensures you get engagement and ensures you get something good, developing that co-creation advocacy, the future is about that energy, right?
Yeah.
So the future is full of ambiguity. There's no more right decisions. We figured out what all those clear right decisions are, more or less. So there's no right future. There's just a variety of options. The best option is the one that you're going to get everybody behind, and they're going to put their full energy in, and they're going to advocate for it. And so it's going to get much broader exposure and energy than if you pick the thing that you're like, yeah, we can do that. Check, 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 check. You're going to pay a lot for that because nobody really cares.
Right. Yeah. So I want to circle back on how to get to that, but I wanted to share some research as I've worked to quantify what it costs organizations to be spending so much time cobbling data together. There have been a couple of really good reports. One's a 5-Tran report, and I can link to that. But another thing that was really interesting is Dory Clark, who's just I guess she's categorized as a thinker, but she's terrific, cited 2 studies recently that 97% of leaders believe that their highest value to an organization is strategic thinking time. 97% believe that that's their highest value. In a separate study, 96% of leaders say they don't get enough time for strategic thinking, which I think any of us who have been in major corporations, this year and in the previous years, can really relate to that. And so I think we really have to start carving out time for that. Let's close with you sharing a little bit about this program that you're kicking off on collaboration, what you're solving for, and just the initial feedback that you're getting from folks on that.
Well, again, it comes back to like how you spend your days is, of course, how you spend your lives, right? So it comes down to like being able to connect the thread of how you run a meeting to the strategic opportunity, right? Like there's a through line there that often doesn't get recognized, I guess I would say. And you're absolutely right. Taking time out feels irresponsible, and yet it's the only thing that's going to get you to that next level. So I'm finding that my clients didn't necessarily understand the value of having a thought partner when they started. So we started doing a very prescriptive workshop or roadmap or business strategy or whatever. But what they're really finding value is that day-to-day prodding to just say, no, pause, go ask people what they think rather than going and telling people what they should be thinking, right? So because you're kind of radically changing how you approach your day or your schedule, having that backstop, I guess I would say, to encourage that is really valuable for people.
Fabulous. And I hope as you work through these series of workshops that you have some folks who might be willing to share some experiences publicly, because I think one of the most powerful things we can do to move leaders, I don't know if this is sad or not, but one of the most powerful things we can do to move leaders is help them see where this has been done in other organizations and what it's delivered. Because I think leaders are scared too, that if they take too much time, and I mean C-suites and boards, if they take too much time to be doing something new and it doesn't deliver, they're on the hot seat as well. So I think out of your program, I think we're probably going to get some interesting stories, and I hope people are willing
Yeah,
to share.
and I'll have a story to kind of wrap that up, which is people feel so much pressure and responsibility for finding the answer. And what happens if you reorient yourself, it actually reduces anxiety because you're not doing it alone and you don't have to come with the answer, right? It's a joint collaborative conversation and a joint agreement about where you go. And so ironically, this approach really reduces that anxiety and that clinging to structure but again, getting over that hump is really hard. So getting yourself out of your environment is critical.
It is hard. And just seeing a couple people who have been in your shoes and have done it, I think can be really inspirational. So I know you and I could talk about this all day, but really hoping to give like short chunks of inspiration to folks. So thank you for coming and sharing. I think we have a lot of things you've said that we could actually do some merch out of. We could like make some t-shirts. So I'm going to give a think to that too. But thank you, Rachel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Marina. It was great to be here.